There is a detail buried inside Prince Harry's own memoir that almost nobody talked about properly at the time. A single line, written in his own words, about the morning his son Archie was born. He wrote that within 2 hours of their son being born, they were back at Frogmore. 2 hours from a hospital birth back home before the press had even been told she was in labor. Now, for most people who read that line, it passed unremarkably. But for one particular commentator, a woman with decades of royal connections, a New York Times best-selling biography of Princess Diana to her name, and a gift for saying loudly what others will only whisper, that single line became the thread she pulled. And what Lady Colin Campbell claims she found when she pulled it has been circulating in the royal commentary world ever since. If you value honest, careful reporting on the royal family that treats you as the intelligent reader you are, I hope you will stay with this channel. There is always more to say, and always a reason to say it carefully. Lady Cullen Campbell. If you follow royal commentary at all, you know the name. Born in Jamaica in 1949, British by residence, aristocratic by marriage, however briefly, to Lord Colin Campbell, the son of the Duke of Argyll, she has written 7 unauthorized books about the British royal family, including a biography of Diana, Princess of Wales, that reached the New York Times bestseller list in 1992 and reportedly drew on conversations with people close to Diana herself. She has been a fixture of royal gossip columns, reality television, and YouTube commentary for years. She calls herself Lady C. She lives in Castle Goring in Sussex. She is, by any measure, a significant figure in the world of royal commentary, which is precisely why what she says carries weight in certain circles, and precisely why what she says requires careful examination. Because in January 2025, Lady C began pushing a claim about Archie and Lilibet that went far beyond ordinary royal commentary. She alleged, publicly and repeatedly, that neither Archie nor Lilibet were Meghan's biological children, that the couple had used surrogacy for both pregnancies, and she called in her characteristically direct manner for absolute proof that Meghan bore those children. Now, before we go any further, there is something that needs to be said plainly. Lady Colin Campbell herself, speaking in a separate interview, acknowledged the following. She stated that it was simply outrageous to suggest the institution would go out of its way to place 2 non-biological children in the line of succession. She said the palace would not allow it. Let that land for a moment. The same person who was publicly calling for proof of the children's biological origins also acknowledged in the same period that the palace would never permit such a thing, that the suggestion was outrageous. She appears to have held both positions simultaneously, and that contradiction tells you something important about how this story was built. But let us take the claims seriously enough to actually examine them, because the women watching this have spent decades following this family carefully, and they deserve a proper accounting. The first thread Lady C and others pulled was the 2-hour line from Spare. Here is what actually happened, documented in Harry's own memoir and confirmed by subsequent reporting. Meghan was a week past her due date when they quietly left Frogmore Cottage in a nondescript people carrier without alerting the journalists stationed at the gates. They went to the Portland Hospital in London. Meghan's labor was induced. She was given gas and air. Archie was born at 5:26 in the morning. And then, and this is the key detail, Harry wrote that they immediately wanted to leave, quietly, without fanfare, because the alternative was the kind of media circus that surrounded every other royal birth, and they had deliberately chosen to avoid it. They got back into the people carrier, they drove back to Frogmore, and only then, after they were safely home, was it announced that Meghan had been in labor. Harry himself describes arguing with his communications chief, Sarah Latham, about it. He told her it was not true to announce she was in labor when she had already given birth. Latham explained that the press expected the dramatic, suspenseful story. Harry objected, but the announcement went out anyway. In other words, the confusion around Archie's birth, The strange timeline, the announcement that came after the fact, the 2-hour return, was not a sign of a cover-up. It was the direct result of Harry and Meghan's very deliberate, very documented decision to handle the birth on their own terms and escape the hospital before the press could document it. Harry wrote about it, in detail, with self-criticism about the announcement timing, in a book that sold over 1 million copies in its first week. This is not a hidden secret. It is a well-documented story hiding in plain sight. The second thread was the palace announcement. Buckingham Palace confirmed that Meghan had given birth in the early hours of the morning, but made that announcement in the afternoon. This discrepancy was seized upon as evidence of something sinister. But here again, the explanation is entirely mundane. The announcement was deliberately delayed because the couple wanted to leave the hospital quietly before any official statement went out. This is described clearly in Spare. The delay was a communications choice, not a cover-up. And the third thread, perhaps the most emotionally charged, was the claim that surrogacy would disqualify Archie and Lilibet from the line of succession. This allegation was amplified by sources at Radar Online, an outlet with a long and documented history of publishing unverified Sussex-related claims. The unnamed palace courtier they cited reportedly said speculation about the children had been simmering for years and that both children had been under cloak and dagger secrecy. But here is what nobody asked loudly enough at the time. Even if surrogacy had been used, a perfectly legal, increasingly common, and entirely respectable option that millions of families around the world have chosen, would it actually affect the line of succession? The answer, according to legal experts who have examined British succession law, is genuinely uncertain. The Succession to the Crown Act 2013 does not specifically address surrogacy. The matter has never been tested. But what is clear is that Prince Harry is the biological father and legal parent of both children, and that Meghan is their legal mother. Their place in the line of succession has never been formally challenged by the palace. And Lady C herself, as we have already noted, called the suggestion that the palace would place non-biological children in the succession outrageous. So why did the story take off the way it did? This is the part I think deserves the most honest discussion, and it requires us to look at Lady Colin Campbell not as a villain, but as a figure who is herself more complicated than the YouTube titles suggest. She is 75 years old. She was hospitalized in October 2025 after a fall that required surgery for a broken hip. She has spent her career navigating a world that has not always been kind to her. A woman who was raised as a boy due to a medical condition at birth, who fought for years to be recognized as herself, who built an entire life and an entire career through force of personality and genuine intelligence in circles that often dismissed her. Her 1992 biography of Diana revealed details about the princess's eating disorder and her marital unhappiness long before those things became public knowledge. People magazine later called her Diana biography the most believable of all. She is not without credibility. She is not without sources. She has genuine connections in royal and aristocratic circles that span decades. But she is also a commentator whose profile and whose revenue, through YouTube and books and public speaking, depends on the continued relevance of the Sussex story. And the Sussex story, at its most commercially potent, is a story of secrets and deceptions, of things hidden from the public, of a palace that knows more than it says. That narrative framework has proven extraordinarily effective at generating clicks, views, and book sales. And it has proven equally effective at spreading claims that cannot be verified about two children who are entirely innocent of everything being said about them. Because that is the thing that gets lost in all of this commentary. Archie and Lilibet are children, real children, who did not choose their parents, their names, their titles, their press coverage, or the conspiracy theories that circulate about their births. They are growing up in Montecito, California, going to school, living what is by all accounts a remarkably ordinary daily life given the extraordinary circumstances of their family. And the conversations happening about them on YouTube, in comment sections, on Substack newsletters and royal commentary channels are conversations being had about real children. That is worth sitting with, whatever your feelings about their parents. So, where does all of this leave us? Lady Colin Campbell is a real royal commentator with real sources, a real history of publishing information that later proved accurate, and a genuine platform in the world of royal commentary. She is not a figure to be dismissed. But the specific claims she has made about Archie and Lilibet, that they were born via surrogacy, that the palace knows the truth and hiding it, that Meghan bore neither child, have not been verified by any credible source. The palace has never formally raised the issue, no documentary evidence has emerged, and Lady C herself acknowledged in the same period that such a scenario would be outrageous and that the institution would never permit it. The 2-hour hospital timeline is explained fully and clearly in Harry's own memoir. The confusing birth announcement is explained fully by Harry's own admission that his communications team issued a statement they both knew was inaccurate in order to give the press the story they expected. These are not cover-up details. They are messy, human, documented details from a couple who handled their children's births the way they handled most things, by trying to maintain control of a story in a world that was constantly trying to take that control away from them. Whether that approach was wise is a different question. Whether it generated confusion is obviously yes. Whether the confusion was deliberately manufactured to conceal something else entirely, there is simply no credible evidence that it was. Lady C's dark truth about Archie and Lilibet turns out to be something quite different from what the title promises. The dark truth is this. In a world where royal commentary is a significant commercial industry, claims about children generate enormous engagement. They play to the deepest anxieties about authenticity, about who belongs in the succession, about whether the public is being deceived by the people their taxes and their loyalty once supported. And the people who generate those claims are not always wrong about everything. Lady C was not wrong about Diana. She may not be wrong about everything she says about Harry and Meghan. But she is not a reliable guide to the births of two children who are, by every legal and documented account, exactly who they have always been presented as being. The question I want to leave you with is a gentle one. In a media environment where the loudest claim gets the most clicks, and where even a credible voice can be pulled toward the most dramatic version of a story, how do we decide what to believe? And what do we owe to the children caught in the middle of it? Those are not easy questions, but they are the right ones to ask. Please do share your thoughts in the comments below. This is exactly the kind of conversation this community handles with care and intelligence.